Dartington Hall, with its grand stone walls and sweeping green landscape, had long been a place of whispered tales. The old estate, nestled in the heart of Devon, had seen centuries of life and death, of nobility and servants, of love and betrayal. But one story rose above all others, a tale that sent chills down the spines of even the bravest souls. The legend of the Headless Horseman. It was said that on certain moonless nights, when the mist from the river Dart crept up through the trees like ghostly fingers, a rider would appear at the lowest gate of the drive. A rider with no head, the sound of hooves striking stone, the jingle of rusted armor, and the hollow emptiness where a face should have been. These were the signs of his arrival, and those who saw him never forgot. It was a particularly cold November night when Thomas Ellery, the estate's new caretaker, first heard the tale. He was sitting by the fire in the servants' quarters when old Mrs. Hewitt, the housekeeper, leaned in and whispered, "You best be careful near the river gate, lad. That's where he rides." Thomas raised an eyebrow. "Who rides?" "The Headless Horseman," she muttered, her voice barely above the crackling flames. Thomas smirked. "You don't actually believe that, do you?" Mrs. Hewitt's face darkened. "Believe it or not, boy, but I've heard him myself. Just last winter, as I was closing up the hall for the night, hoofbeats, loud and heavy, though the road was empty." The other servants around the fire nodded solemnly. "The old lord's coachman saw him once," chimed in Jasper, the stable hand. "Said he was ridden a black stallion, cloak billowing behind him, but no head on his shoulders." "A trick of the moonlight," Thomas scoffed. Jasper shook his head. "No moon that night, friend. Just darkness." Silence settled over the group. Mrs. Hewitt finally sighed. "You'll see for yourself one day, Thomas." Thomas chuckled, draining the last of his ale. "I doubt that." But he was wrong. That night, Thomas found himself unable to sleep. The wind howled through the cracks in the old stone walls, rattling the window panes of his small quarters. The thought of hoofbeats in the dark stayed with him, lingering like an unwelcome shadow in his mind. "Superstitious nonsense," he muttered, throwing off his blankets. But as he lay there, staring at the ceiling, a thought took hold. What if I proved them wrong? If he walked to the lowest gate and saw nothing, he could put the legend to rest for good. So, without another thought, Thomas grabbed his lantern, wrapped his coat around his shoulders, and stepped out into the night. The night air was biting cold, and the mist from the river clung to the ground in swirling tendrils. The estate was silent, not even the usual rustling of leaves or hoots of owls. It was as if the world was holding its breath. Thomas walked slowly, his boots crunching against the damp gravel of the path. The lowest gate stood ahead, looming in the dark. A heavy iron structure, worn with age, it marked the entrance to the old carriage road, the very place where the Headless Horseman was said to appear. Thomas swallowed. The air here felt different, heavy. He gritted his teeth. "It's just a gate." But then, a sound, a faint thud in the distance. His heart skipped. He turned, lantern raised high. Nothing. But the night had shifted. The mist seemed to pulse around him, thicker now, curling around his feet like it was alive. Then, the hoofbeats. Slow at first. Measured, steady. Then faster, louder, closer. Thomas froze. His breath came in ragged gasps as the sound thundered through the darkness, shaking the very ground beneath him. And then he saw it. A shadow emerging from the mist. A rider on a massive black horse, galloping straight toward him. Thomas tried to move, to run, but he couldn't. His feet were rooted to the ground. The lantern shook in his grip. And then the horse burst through the fog, its eyes burning like embers in the dark. The rider wore a tattered cloak, his armor rusted and dented with age. But where his head should have been, nothing. Just an empty void. The horse reared up, its hooves crashing down just feet from Thomas. A deep, guttural groan echoed through the air, rattling Thomas's bones. Then, in a flash of movement, the rider yanked at his cloak and reached for Thomas. With a sudden burst of terror-fueled strength, Thomas stumbled back, nearly dropping the lantern. His breath came in ragged gasps as he turned and ran, sprinting up the path toward the main hall. The hoofbeats followed, pounding the earth like war drums. Thomas dared one last glance over his shoulder. The rider was right behind him, closing the distance with unnatural speed. His empty shoulders seemed to pulse with energy, as if something unseen watched Thomas from the void. But just as the hall's torchlights came into view, the hoofbeats stopped. The night went silent once more. Thomas wheeled around. Nothing. The mist swirled, the air still heavy with something unspoken. But the rider was gone. Thomas never spoke of what happened that night, but he never walked to the lowest gate alone again. And every now and then, when the night was just right, he would hear it. The distant echo of hooves in the mist. A reminder that some stories, some legends, are more than just whispers in the dark. Because the Headless Horseman of Dartington Hall still rode, and he was always watching. Many thanks for treading this tale's dark path. If its chill gripped you, follow, subscribe, and comment below.